But to have it, you must follow my terms. You must exchange something of value. Elaine, without hesitation, responded immediately. I'm willing to pay any price to have that hair. Elaine is the owner of a famous hair salon located in the heart of Manhattan, where the salon chairs are always filled with customers and the space is constantly buzzing with chatter and laughter. Every day she creates stunning hairstyles, serving even the most demanding clients, and she is never short of compliments. But there is one thing that Elaine always feels is missing: fulfillment. Despite her salon being busy and her reputation spreading far and wide, for some reason she feels like she's on the edge, always yearning for something greater. Elaine doesn't just want to be a good hairstylist. She wants to be a trailblazer, a symbol in the beauty industry, the name everyone admires and craves. She wants something special, something no one else can replicate, an element that makes her salon the only place anyone would go to get the perfect hair. Then, on a sweltering summer morning, while chatting with a close friend in the hairdressing industry, Elaine heard a story she could never forget. It was the tale of a magical hair. A hair that could transform, turning any hairstyle into a masterpiece. Each strand of hair seemed to have its own soul, shimmering, soft and powerful. Most notably, anyone who owned this hair would become the best in the hairdressing industry, even controlling trends and creating true works of art. After hearing this, Elaine felt a mix of excitement and intrigue rising within her. This magical hair wasn't something that could be easily found, and that only fueled her curiosity. She began imagining the magical transformations this hair could bring to her salon. If she could possess it, would customers be lining up outside her door? Could she become the most famous and wealthiest person in the hair industry? But what would happen if Elaine couldn't find this hair? And if she did find it, what would be the price she had to pay? The questions spun around in her mind like a whirlwind that never stopped. She knew that this could be her only chance to achieve her dream, but was it too late to turn back? And if she had to sacrifice something, would she have the courage to follow through? Elaine couldn't stop thinking about the magical hair, and a bold idea began to take root in her mind. She decided she wouldn't let this opportunity slip away. But where would this journey take her? Elaine couldn't stop thinking about the magical hair she had just heard about. The story of a type of hair that could transform any hairstyle into a masterpiece made her heart race faster than ever before. She knew that this was the opportunity she couldn't afford to miss. To achieve her dreams, Elaine was willing to sacrifice everything, regardless of the cost. According to her friend in the industry, this hair was not easy to find. It was tied to a mysterious tale about an enigmatic woman named Isolda, who lived alone in a deep forest near a river. Isolda was famous not only for her strange beauty, but also for her hair. Her hair was not just beautiful, it contained magical powers, capable of making anyone who possessed it the best in the industry. This made Elaine's curiosity and determination grow even stronger. Without hesitation, Elaine immediately packed her things and set off to find Isolda. She walked along misty paths, where faint light filtered through the dense trees. The deeper she went into the forest, the colder and gloomier the air became, as if time itself had stopped. With every step, Elaine felt further from safety, but deep inside there was only one strong urge driving her. She had to have that hair, even if it meant facing danger. When she reached an ancient house hidden deep in the forest, the surroundings seemed to shift abruptly. The house looked like it had stood for centuries, with walls covered in strange symbols that Elaine couldn't understand. The windows were dark, and no sound echoed from within. A feeling of unease rose in Elaine's chest, but she couldn't turn back. Her greed had overpowered all her fear. She approached the house, stopping in front of the door, her hands cold with tension. She didn't know who the woman inside might be. She could be an ordinary person or some kind of strange creature. But she knew that to achieve her dream, she could not let fear hold her back. Elaine took a deep breath and knocked on the ancient door. It opened quietly and a shadow appeared in the doorway. Isolda, the woman she had just heard about, stood there with deep, piercing eyes and lips pressed tightly together, as if waiting for something. She looked at Elaine without saying a word, but her gaze spoke volumes. The mystery and danger of this place began to fill the air. Would Elaine be able to overcome the challenge Isolda would set before her? Or would her greed lead her to an unforeseen outcome? As Elaine stepped through the door of Isolda's strange house, a rush of cold air suddenly enveloped her, as if the air in this house had been frozen in time for centuries. The ancient walls surrounded her, covered in strange symbols that Elaine couldn't decipher. She felt an eerie stillness, as though time itself couldn't touch this place. Each step she took echoed through the space, but no sound came in response. Isolda, the woman Elaine had heard about in the story, stood there like a ghost in the cold atmosphere. She was a middle-aged woman with smooth, velvet-like skin and deep, penetrating eyes that held a mysterious power that Elaine couldn't look away from. A soft smile appeared on Isolda's lips, but in her gaze was a chilling coldness. A wave of anticipation surged within Elaine, but she couldn't turn back. Her goal was clear in her mind, and her curiosity had brought her here. "Do you want my hair, don't you?" Isolda's voice rang out softly, but with such power that it felt as if every word she spoke carried an undeniable threat. She didn't need to say much, just this one sentence made Elaine shudder. "But to have it, you must follow my terms. You must exchange something of value." Elaine, without hesitation, responded immediately. "I'm willing to pay any price to have that hair." Her voice was full of determination with no trace of doubt. She could only think of the wealth, fame, and the recognition this magical hair could bring. But deep inside, Elaine couldn't deny the faint feeling of fear that was rising within her. Isolda remained silent for a long while, her gaze never leaving Elaine, as if she were assessing whether Elaine had the patience and courage to fulfill her promise. Finally, Isolda let out a soft, mysterious laugh. "But remember, if you don't keep your word, you will face the consequences," she said, her tone sounding both like a warning and a mockery. These warnings didn't make Elaine hesitate. She didn't hear the caution in Isolda's words. Her mind was consumed only with the image of the magical hair and the fame it could bring. Despite sensing the danger, her ambition overpowered all reason. She was determined. There was no turning back. The next day, Elaine walked into her salon holding a handful of the magical hair that Isolda had given her, her hands gripping tightly, unable to hide her excitement. The hair was soft, shimmering like silk, with each strand seeming to have its own soul, both delicate and powerful. A strange sensation spread through Elaine's heart, as if this hair was not just a material object, but a mysterious gift carrying powers she couldn't fully understand. Elaine quickly got to work. She crafted stunning wigs from the magical hair, and within a short time they became the hottest item in the city. Each wig had an enchanting allure, not only beautiful but also making those who wore them irresistibly captivating. Customers flocked to Elaine's salon, eagerly awaiting the magical wigs with admiration. Compliments poured in, and Elaine's fame soared like a star rising in the sky of the hairdressing industry. The feeling of victory, power, and fame made Elaine unable to stop. She didn't just want her salon to be number one. She wanted more than that. One late night, when no one was around, Elaine decided to keep a portion of the magical hair for herself. She told herself that Isolda would never know, and after all, she had already paid the price with her risk. There was no reason not to keep some of that power for herself. But everything began to change one early morning. When Elaine woke up, she felt that something was wrong with her body. A cold sensation ran down her spine, making her feel uneasy. She looked at her hands, and in panic, she noticed that her fingers were turning green, covered in scales like fish skin. The coldness from her hands spread throughout her body, and Elaine trembled as she looked at herself in the mirror. Her eyes widened as she realized that something horrible was happening. She was beginning to transform into a strange creature. Fear consumed her, but she couldn't take her eyes off herself. The fish-like scales spread further, and parts of her body began to change, like a scene from a nightmare. Elaine felt desperate, panicked, but deep down, a part of her couldn't deny the mysterious allure that the magical hair had brought. Overwhelmed with panic from the strange transformation happening to her body, Elaine could no longer stand still for even a moment. The horrifying sensation as her fingers turned green and were covered in scales like fish skin made her unable to contain her fear. Parts of her body began to change and a coldness spread throughout her, as if she were losing her humanity. She knew there was only one way to resolve this: return to the riverbank, where she had met Isolda before, the only place that could help her escape this curse. Elaine ran frantically, her feet barely touching the ground, her heart pounding in her chest. Each step felt like a heavy blow to her mind, pushing her into an indescribable state of desperation. When she reached the riverbank, she had no strength left, collapsing, her eyes filled with tears as they streamed down her face. "Please, I was wrong! I will return everything I took!" Elaine shouted, her voice choked with emotion, her eyes fixed on the river as if awaiting forgiveness. But around her, there was only silence, and the river's water gently rippled, with no sign of anyone, no response whatsoever. Her heart was filled with confusion and fear. And then, as if materializing with power, a shadow began to emerge from the water. Isolda rose from the surface, her long hair flowing around her like golden waves curling onto the shore, her icy gaze fixed directly on Elaine without any expression, offering no comfort. Each step she took was like the presence of an unshakable force. "You didn't keep your promise, Elaine," Isolda's voice echoed as cold as frozen water. "Now you must pay the price." These words struck Elaine like a knife to the heart. All comfort, all hope vanished in that instant. Elaine couldn't believe what she had just heard. She fell to her knees, her hands trembling as she reached out, pleading for forgiveness. "Please, give me one more chance. I will return everything. I promise." But Isolda only looked at her coldly without a shred of compassion. She raised her hand and, in an instant, the surface of the water began to boil, as if pushed up by an invisible force. The entire atmosphere around them seemed heavier, full of pressure. "This is your last chance," Isolda said, her tone unchanging like a final warning. Elaine didn't know what to do anymore. She could feel the power threatening her, but her greed and desire kept her from letting go. Was this the price she had to pay for her greed? Or would Elaine face the terrible consequences that Isolda had warned her about? She didn't know, but one thing was certain. Everything would never be the same again. Elaine rushed into the forest, utterly exhausted, but a feeling of desperation and fear rose within her. The magical hair had given her the fame and power she had longed for, but now it was also the very thing turning her into a strange creature. Her body was changing, parts of her form were slowly morphing, and she felt as if she was losing her humanity. That hair, beautiful and powerful, was the price she had to pay for her uncontrollable greed. She had no other choice but to return to the Juju man's house in the forest, hoping to find a way to break this curse. Her heart pounded in her chest as she stepped into the dark house, the place where she had first felt the mysterious invisible power. The door creaked open, and she stepped inside, her eyes full of fear and anxiety. The Juju man looked up at her, his gaze cold and full of suspicion. Without a greeting, he asked a question that only deepened Elaine's fear. "What happened to you?" His voice was icy, as if he already knew what was coming. Elaine swallowed hard, trembling as she replied, "I can't return the hair. And now my body is slowly turning into a sea creature, but please, sir, help me." Her voice choked with emotion, her eyes red from exhaustion and panic. "I'll lose everything if I don't have it." She could feel the coldness in the air, the tension as if time had stopped. The Juju man remained silent for a long moment, his eyes seeming to scrutinize every word she spoke, reading her thoughts as if they were an open book. Finally, he sighed, his lips curling into an enigmatic smile, and replied in a tone full of hidden meaning. "I can help you, but you must pay with something more valuable." Those words struck Elaine like a blow to the head. She could no longer think clearly. Only one feeling remained: desperation. There was no time to hesitate. She nodded in agreement, not fully understanding what she would have to sacrifice. As the juju man watched her with a gaze full of mystery, a faint smile curled on his lips. Elaine didn't realize it, but every word and every action of his had led her into a game from which there was no turning back. The next morning, Elaine woke up with a sense of confusion. She looked into the mirror and her heart seemed to stop as she realized a horrifying truth. Her transformation could not be reversed. Her fingers, still green and covered with scales, had now spread across her entire body, her skin becoming shiny and wrinkled like that of a fish. She couldn't even speak anymore. The sound had vanished from her throat, replaced by an eerie silence, as though her voice had been taken from her forever. She was no longer the Elaine of before, no longer the confident woman who ran a famous salon. She had become a strange creature, a part of the mystical world she had once longed for. Despite this, her greed remained unshaken. She couldn't let go of the dream she had long nurtured. Even though her body had changed and strange sensations surrounded her, Elaine continued to run the salon, serving customers, doing everything she could to maintain the fame she had achieved. But the customers who once admired her now looked at her with suspicion, sometimes even fear. The magical hair she had once owned had now become a sign of her strange transformation, a symbol of her insatiable greed. Before long, whispers began to spread throughout the town. "Elaine is changing," they said. "She's no longer the talented hairstylist we once knew." Her brand began to lose its appeal. The customers who once trusted her turned their backs. No one wanted to get their hair done by someone with such an odd appearance. Although the salon still had clients, no one came for her skill, but out of curiosity or fear. She was left alone in the success she had built, but no one looked at her with admiration anymore. Everything she had built began to crumble. In the quietest moments, when no one was left, Elaine stood before the mirror looking at the transformation she had caused. She remembered the warnings, the promises she had broken because of her greed. What she had now brought no joy, only an emptiness in her heart. She realized that even though she had everything, wealth, fame, those things could not fill the void in her soul. Only kindness, respect, and keeping promises were truly the values worth cherishing. The story ends with the image of Elaine in the mirror, where she sees herself, a strange creature, no longer the Elaine that everyone once admired. The whispers about her transformation had spread throughout the town, and no one remembered her as the talented hairstylist anymore. Elaine had now become a symbol of endless greed, a valuable lesson about the importance of keeping promises and what ambition can take away from you.